Redditors, what are your most interesting roommate stories?
Mr. Reddit.
My South Korean roommate in college played StarCraft 2? Not sure, well into the night. We're talking like I'd be getting up to go to class and he'd be logging off. It cured my insomnia. Listening to a game in a language I didn't understand was very soothing, apparently, and I went from taking 3 to 4 hours a night to fall asleep, if I would at all, to falling asleep within 30 seconds of laying my head down. My freshman year roommate at the University of Chicago was an extreme recluse who spent all day studying math and philosophy while listening to bad classical music, Wagner, Bruckner, on headphones. I was a musician and party guy who also had some serious academic ambitions, but I could study at the library. When I would have someone come into my room, he slipped out without a word. We never spoke more than a few sentences until one day, about halfway through the year, he saw me struggling with a calculus problem, which I had no hope of solving, and told me 3 unrelated and very clever ways it could be solved. That was the end of my relationship with John Senecky. Years later, I saw a picture of him at Harvard, where he apparently secured a position and a following. He had a girl on each arm, and looked like a different guy. I have not heard anything about him since. My roommate in college claimed he was involved with the mafia. He was constantly sweaty, was very jumpy, and always had a lot of cash in his car. He never was around on the weekends, and I never saw him drink. Strangest of all is that he never once slept in his room. He was always on the couch by the door. He eventually told me that it was because if someone ever broke in looking for him, he wanted them to find him right away, so no one else would get hurt. I still don't know if he was telling the truth, but nonetheless I always locked my bedroom door at night.
A childhood friend of mine was randomly assigned a drug dealer to room with in college, but he had no idea because it wasn't even a week into classes before some jackasses broke into their room at night and beat the fuck out of both my friend and his roommate, like some 30-year-old, and some juniors came into a freshman/sophomore dorm and assaulted them in their sleep. They were after his drugs and money, and didn't know who my friend was, so beat him up too. Friend was escorted to class by cops every day, swapped rooms under tight security, and had to see a therapist because of how it left him. I think he considered coming home, but stuck it out and is doing a lot better now. Probably helps that they caught the 3 who did it and they're jailed, and the roommate admitted to what was going on and was expelled from what I remember.
I'm pretty sure I used to live with a hobbit, man about 5 feet 1 inch, curly brown hair, constantly cheerful demeanor, never wore shoes, inside or out, literally slept on the floor in what can only be explained as a nest of blankets, started a garden and encouraged me to eat his tomatoes all the time, would bring home samosas and other goodies, always giving me half just because. He and his wife had a dream of living off the grid in a tiny home on a truck. I hope he's doing well.
I had a roommate who was so fat when she sit on the toilet her whole ass didn't fit and she shit on the toilet seat. And didn't clean it off. She told me she was getting another job that would double her salary and had also told me that she'd left her kids with her mother back in some other state where she was from. She said back there she'd been to jail for drugs, but other than, well, shitting on the toilet, she wasn't a bad person. Then she moved out and tried to short me $300 in bills. She was making more than 2.5x what I was making at this point and I couldn't cover it. She gave me a story about her mom dying, and when I saw her FB page she had someone calling her daughter posting on her page. I called her work and left a voicemail on every mailbox explaining that I was their new worker's ex-roommate and I was trying to get a forwarding address BC. I wanted to send flowers for the mom's funeral. Then I called her and told her I'd done it. I asked if they knew she'd been arrested and if she was aware that lying on a job application about jail time was grounds for being fired. Given she was renting from her boss, well, it might be a bad situation. She agreed to meet me 30 minutes later with the money. I'd given her furniture, a dresser and a bed, and let her pay rent in 2 payments every month. When our meth head roommate brought a crack whore home and she was away for the weekend, I alerted her and locked her bedroom for her when she panicked about not being there to watch her stuff. I was nice to her and this was what she'd done. On top of trying to screw me out of $300, when she left she poured Sprite all over the floor for no reason at all.
Regarding vomit, once when I was away on holiday, my cat vomited on my flatmate's windowsill. If I had been home, I would have cleaned it up, but my flatmate was still in the mindset that I should clean it when I got home.
Anywho, despite sleeping next to dried cat vomit for a week out of stubbornness, my cat came back and subsequently ate said vom, leaving just the residue that also had left a trail down the wall. Just in case you missed it, his bed was pushed right up against that wall. When I came home and learned about all of this, I decided that waiting for me to come home and sleeping next to it was childish, so I refused to clean the residue, and there it stayed until we moved out. Should I have cleaned it? Probably. But what's the point of having flatmates if you can't foster deep-seated resentments and long-standing stalemates about house cleaning?
Not a roommate, but a friend of mine, had to be taught how to use a washer and dryer, and how to use the stove. She was extremely competent and seemed like she was going to win the adulting game, so I was super confused. Turned out her mother had some pretty bad anxiety and couldn't handle anyone doing anything, because they might do it differently. The result was her and her siblings being some of the neatest people I know, always putting everything back exactly how it should be immediately, but didn't know how to actually do anything in the house that was beyond the broom and mop, even though they were well adjusted otherwise. It was such an inverse from my own childhood, where I had been left home alone with a small child and expected to figure most of it out as I went, that I struggled to grasp it. I just kept asking, "You don't know how to X." I'm sure it was super annoying, and she was very gracious about it.
There are plenty, but one of my roommates used to sleepwalk and sleep talk almost every night, and I was the only one who'd be awake whenever it would happen. I'd witness her cleaning our fridge, sealing our open bag of chips, and I'd hear her quote Shakespeare in her sleep. What made her go back to bed was me asking her to sleep, and she'd look at me and close her eyes. Whenever I asked her if she recalled any of it, the answer was always no. My wife sleep talks really bad. When she was an ER registrar, she tried checking me in multiple times in her sleep. I've woken up to questions like, why is the sleeping bunny in the corner, and how did that basket start floating, many times. The best one though was when she sat up, grabbed a bottle of water off the end table, reached her arm out straight over the edge of the bed, and dumped the entire bottle directly into her purse. When I asked what the hell just happened, all she replied was, pesky ass purse fires, and then laid back down. My husband used to be a manager at a restaurant where spec was really important. Every dish had to have the same number of broccoli or croutons or whatever. They would get spec inspections twice a year, which were a huge deal. He would sleep talk when he got stressed. One night he says very loudly, "How many tomatoes in a salad?" I was half asleep and said, "What?" And he repeated in a very slow voice, like he was talking to an idiot, "How many tomatoes in a salad?" I knew what was happening but was still confused, so I just said, "I don't know." And he sighed like I was his life's greatest disappointment and rolled away from me. My girlfriend sleep talks as well, and I keep a note in my phone to remember the funny ones. My favorite was when I was watching 6 Feet Under. My GF is fully asleep next to me. It got to the part when Nate proposed to Brenda and my lady suddenly laughs and says he used to think she was a pair of tits, now he thinks she's a piece of hot. I ask, "Who's he?" And she says, "Picasso." I'm trying to contain my laughter and ask who she means by she. My GF says I don't identify people by gender and rolls back over and passes back out. Same, about the notes in your phone. My most recent ex talked a lot in his sleep. It was always hilarious, or creepy. A few of my favorites, you can get a fuck ton of trade-in value in. Flying nutsacks, there's more balls at Rammstein shows than at Wimbledon, sits up, and looks at the TV, where the OA is playing. Sees the character Kareem shut up, Drake. You could fill the Horseshoe Stadium with ranch dip. Him, super grumpy mumbling noises me, "What's wrong?" Him, "Did you just say what's wrong?" Me, "Yes." Him, Frenchman, wakes up, looks at me, then his pillow, "Holy crap." Oh wow, sits up, looks across the room, then looks at me and smiles, "What did you would do?" Smiles. Giggles like a little boy, passes out again. Me, "Babe, you need to turn on your side, you're like, choking." Him, "Alright, but I'm killing dragons." Me, "Why are you killing dragons?" Him, "I'm trying to kill the dragons, but they're really hard to find. I need to find the dragons." Me, "Okay, but you still need to turn onto your side, okay?" Him, UGH, him, thrashing violently, fucking what the hell, ugh. Me, "What's wrong?" Him, "Fucking stupid, goddamned bitches not knowing anything about Teddy Roosevelt. Pineapple on half. Shoot the turkey, and kick it down the stairs." Just be a sport and cock-block the good guys. Notices me shuffling out of bed in his most encouraging voice. Get out there, girl, I'm a human. Him, we already shipped one up there. Me, up where? Him, don't look at me, I don't work here. Me, oh, you don't? Him, I don't want to go. Me, go where? Him, south. Me, like Florida? Him, no. Me, like Mississippi? Him, no. Like. Lifts like, farts me, did you just fart and retort to me? Him, yes, me, burps him, please don't poop in the bed. Him, gas pee puppies, puppies, pee 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 puppies. Me, puppies. What about puppies? Are we getting a puppy? Him, ugh. Me, can we get a puppy tomorrow? Him, ugh. Me, can we get a puppy tomorrow, because you love me? Him, how about I don't waterboard you, because I love you? Me, so, puppy, tomorrow, we get a puppy tomorrow. Him, you're making me change my mind. Him, pirate. Me, pirate? Him, basically a pirate. Me, you're basically a pirate? Him, no, points somewhat in my direction. Me, I'm a pirate? Him, no. He, points across the room. Is. Basically. A. Pirate. Pronouns, pal. Him, wakes up, giggles, looks at the wall and waves hi. Me, lol, hi. Him, giggles and says not you as his eyes grow whiter and whiter. Me, oh. Oh God. Stop. Stop that. Who? Him, smiles while his eyes grow whiter and he slowly leans in toward me. Me, who? 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 Him, smiling, you'll see, the die is cast, giggles, while glancing back and forth between me and the wall, and slowly falls back to sleep. Me, freaks out silently. Him, wakes up, looks at TV, are you watching The Notebook? Me, what? No. Him, if you cry, I'll punch you. Edit, last one he was threatening to punch me if I cried. BC he thought I was watching The Notebook, not vice versa. Somehow that got messed up when copying pasting these.
I had a roommate that became very susceptible to suggestions when he would first fall asleep. And wouldn't remember anything he did the next morning. One time, we woke him up and told him that his girlfriend had stolen his shoes. He jumped out of bed, went to the landline phone, yeah, I was in college 20 years ago, called up his girlfriend and accused her of stealing his shoes. We were all dying laughing at this time. She blew him off, and after he hung up, he went into the kitchen. When he came back, he was holding 2 brownies, and had the saddest look on his face. Look, my girlfriend burnt up my shoes. I'll never be able to wear them again. He placed them next to his bed, and then went back to sleep.
My freshman year college roommate was a random pairing. This kid partied all night and slept all day, legit wouldn't wake up until 5 p.m. He goes MIA for like a week. I call my mom because I'm not sure he's even alive. She searches to see if he has been arrested. Before she can call me back, the cops are knocking at our door and ask, have you seen ______, and I say no. Mom calls me back a few minutes later. He had been booked for robbery at a convenience store which was in our dorm building. He tried to hide in an air vent. He made the front page of the campus newspaper, was expelled, and I got the whole dorm to myself for the rest of the fall-spring semester.
I spent over a year falling asleep to the angry, muffled, whisper but not really arguments between my roomie and his girlfriend. Just muffled enough that I couldn't understand what the problem was, but they were clearly not happy together, so I just lie in bed wondering, what's my duty of care here? Like they weren't violent with each other, and it wasn't like one person was terrorizing the other, it was just 2 young people in a consensual and mutual spiral of despair.
She was majorly depressed. She worked a lot and for very little money, so she would mostly come home and lock herself in her room. At some point, she stopped cleaning or doing laundry. She worked at a childcare center, and at some point contracted impetigo. Gross, but treatable. She wouldn't get it treated, however, because it was too expensive. So I lived in fear I would contract it, let alone the other kids she was watching. She told her work it was being treated and was no longer contagious, they just believed her. She had these massive, crusty patches all over her face and just didn't care. After 5 whole weeks, she finally went to the doctor. Things were tense until her mom came to visit a few weeks later and convinced her to be committed. She had been sending suicidal messages to her mom every day for weeks. Her mom paid her rent for the next 3 months until the lease was up, and she moved back home. Never spoke again. Hope she is doing better.
We met when we showed up for dorm room assignments our freshman year of college. Almost 50 years later, we're still the closest of friends. I recently attended his daughter's wedding. A grand affair, because he happens to be uber wealthy. At one point I found myself choking up, and it wasn't for the bride and groom, it was for John and me. How far we've come from that first awkward handshake a half-century ago. We met when we showed up for dorm room assignments our freshman year of college. Almost 50 years later, we're still the closest of friends. I recently attended his daughter's wedding. A grand affair, because he happens to be uber wealthy. At one point I found myself choking up, and it wasn't for the bride and groom, it was for John and me. How far we've come from that first awkward handshake a half-century ago.
I once had a roommate for about 5 years who was literally, not figuratively, a fucking genius and also an insanely good person. She built a 3D printer from scratch in our living room before 3D printers were a thing anyone could purchase, and she did it just for lulz. She also built a Hackintosh for me because I needed more bandwidth/space/whatever than what Apple Incorporated offered at the time and still more than what Apple Incorporated offers today. She also made traditional bagels from scratch at least once per quarter in our kitchen, and the best fucking cheesecake I have ever tasted in my whole entire life, also from scratch. She is a unicorn, and we are still the best of friends. Though we no longer live together. I have absolutely no regrets. If people still exchanged friendship bracelets or rings, the gems I would put on hers could be captured photogenically via satellites from deep space. This Earth, universe etc. doesn't deserve her. Not sure what dimension does, honestly. I am just proud to call her friend. What do I bring to our friendship? Not enough. That's for sure. First and foremost, upon our first meeting, I was honest and kind. It is amazing how often people discount and write off people because they don't fit an archetype. My dearest friend, the genius who is also an amazing baker, is one of the kindest people I have ever met. We are both word game nuts and I kick her ass in word games quite often. I have also helped her via my areas of expertise and we make each other laugh uproariously. We've been friends for about 15 years. Friends are the family you make for yourself, so choose wisely and with an open heart. Assume nothing about the people you meet. Instead, be patient and kind and you will eventually learn everything that truly matters about a person and also yourself. I think being kind is the easiest thing I have ever done. Even when it is the last thing I want to do in a moment. Kindness lasts longer than any of my other impulses/feelings/emotions. I wonder why.
My college roommate didn't know how to do laundry before we started school. We had a community washer and dryer on our floor. Probably the third week of school, I went down to get a soda from the machine and I walk in and there are bubbles 4 inches deep on the floor. My roommate walks in behind me to check his laundry. He had put 3 full scoops of Tide in the washer with his load. I had to take him to an off-campus laundromat to wash all of the excess soap out of his clothes.
My wife had a roommate whose clothes smelled bad all the time. But they would do laundry together, so they knew that she washed her clothes, but they smelled like they weren't, until one day when they were shopping together, and the roommate said that she had to buy laundry detergent, and then picked up some Downy soft fabric softener. My wife asked her if she was also going to get detergent, and the roommate replied, "I just did." My wife tried to convince her that fabric softener is not soap, and wouldn't clean your clothes, and the roommate was adamant. "This is what I've always used, and it works great." My wife tried to be nice about how it didn't work, and that her clothes didn't smell good after a day, when the Downy scent would wear off, but nothing she said made a difference. I hope that when the roommate got married 12 years ago, her husband was able to convince her to use actual detergent for her clothes.